Hello and welcome to everyone across the nation joining today's workshop on how to follow an intake process using CASAS e-tests online. This is Martha Perez with the CASAS Technology Support Team, and I will be presenting today's workshop. This workshop focuses on incorporating beginning literacy reading, Form 27, and Level A forms during intake, along with using the locator and pretest by following a recommended intake process. A certified proctor is responsible for having intake sessions available, and a certified proctor follows the intake process when managing sessions and administering tests. This is one of 23 complimentary CASAS online implementation basics workshops. We highly recommend attending as many workshops possible to learn about best practices and ask questions to become confident in using the online system. Online help is available on our website, from training and support, e-test online help, and TOPS Pro Enterprise help. You will want to be sure and bookmark these as your electronic go-to resources. Electronic resources are updated periodically, so going to them will help to ensure you are receiving the most current information. Information from today's workshop, or for today's workshop, comes from e-test online help in the online user guide. This guide has hyperlinks throughout to help you move quickly between sections. For example, from our table of contents, I will go down and look for Appendix G, CASAS intake process. Okay. Again, you will want to be sure and bookmark electronic resources and search keywords to pinpoint specific information when you need help. You may also download a standalone document from e-test online help. So it's training and support, e-test online help, intake resources. There is a CASAS intake process, and you can download this document, which includes guidelines for an ABE or ESL intake process. Before we get started, I want to be sure and point out where you will find access to CASAS e-test online and TOPS Pro Enterprise online. This is the main domain name address you will use when your agency is set up with an online database. This is commonly referred to as the production server, where live data is produced. For today's workshop, we will be using a simulation server. Okay. Now this is for a fictional school called Rolling Hills Adult School. The simulation server is populated with fictional data to give you a realistic training experience. This is available to anyone wanting to experiment and explore our online system without risk of compromising live data. And you will find information on how to access the simulation server from our website, from training and support, e-test online help, getting started, and download the simulation server document. Okay. Now let's begin, and please feel free to ask any questions along the way. For review and to prepare for demonstration, proctors must sign in into the management console to start sessions when preparing for testing. On a proctor station, launch the web browser. And that is, you need to enter the URL, etestonline.org. In this case, we are using the Rolling Hills Adult School for simulation. From the main domain web page, click Sign In. Enter user credentials. For simulation, enter agency 4908. The user must be a proctor the word Proctor, plus any number from 1 to 50. For example, Proctor 23, and use the email extension at rhas.org. Password is the word Proctor, all lowercase, and then click Login. Okay. From Application Management, click Testing Sessions. Filter for testing sessions to minimize the list. For example, click the drop-down menu, and then we're going to filter sessions that contain intake at the North Campus. So in this case, click the drop-down menu, select the North Campus. On session description, click Contains, and then type the word intake. Then click the refresh button and collapse the retractable filter. Now you have a minimized list of sessions displayed that the proctor will manage while administering tests. Since we are planning to proctor intake at the North Campus, we will start each session. For the beginning literacy session at the North Campus, click Start. To acknowledge responsibilities and duties, set supervisory hours, and then click Start. To start remaining intake sessions, return to the testing sessions list. From the session activity window, at the top right, click the back link. Remember, if you use the web browser back arrow out of habit, you will be automatically logged out of the management console and will need to log in again. Now from Application Management, we're going to click on Testing Sessions, or we are already in the Testing Sessions lister, and repeat steps to start remaining sessions. Set up supervisory hours and start. Click the back link again and click the Start button to acknowledge responsibilities and duties, set supervisory hours, and start the session. The testing sessions list should now display to the logged on proctor. So let me go back. The logged on proctor and the active status for all 3 intake sessions. Then, to prepare computers for testing, proctors go about the lab and launch the web browser, and then enter the URL that I'm pointing to, etesonline.org/rollinghills. In this case, because we're using the simulation server. Now, from the main domain web page, click Administer Test. Connect with the online server. You need to run the executable file. Now, this downloaded the test delivery system and secure browser application on the testing station. Now, the testing session displays the refresh button for test security. Even though the testing station is connected to the online server, a test will not be delivered until the proctor adds the station to an active session. Proctors add stations to active sessions on an ad hoc basis. Multiple sessions may run simultaneously and deliver tests according to the session description. This is commonly recommended practice for test security and flexibility with web-based testing. The proctor is now ready for managing sessions and administering tests as students arrive. Now, intake sessions, let's go back to our session activity window here. And for intake sessions, allow new student records to be added at time of testing and align with the recommended CASAS intake process for accurate test results and program placement. Intake and orientation is your opportunity to welcome students and determine their needs, goals, skill levels, education, and work backgrounds. With an effective intake and orientation process, you will create a learning environment that works with each of these factors. Engage students at the beginning, and they are more likely to have higher retention and completions rates. The most used sessions will be the intake, locator plus pretest highlighted here. This session and the post-test session. Any examinee who has difficulty completing registration information should not be given the locator plus pretest. However, they may be assessed using the beginning literacy, this session, Reading Assessment Form 27. To further refine their placement and to determine their baseline reading level, when using intake sessions, students generally complete registration information before they begin testing. The next workshop will demonstrate using a registration session to separate the registration process from the testing process. This will give you the undivided time with students to assist them in applying the responses on data collection screens and addressing any questions. Now let's look at some highlights of the intake process. At the back of the intake process document is the oral writing screening response sheet. Sorry, folks, I am just quickly scanning through these items. Okay, let me increase this a little bit for ease of view. Now, the top portion of the response sheet may be used as a screening tool to identify students who cannot read or write at all in English. Okay. Let me navigate here throughout this appendix. Now, the oral screening is scored according to a rubric and recorded on the response sheet. The oral screening is intended to provide a quick measure of an examinee's speaking ability and should not be given to those who obviously can speak English well. The oral screening script consists of 6 scored and 1 unscored question. Let me bring up this chart here. Okay. Now the next page gives sample responses to the scored questions for each rubric score 0, 1, or 2. Let me bring up this page here. So here are the example responses to scored questions for each rubric score 0, 1, or 2. Now the writing screening is optional. And let me go to that page. As you can see, the writing screening is optional, consisting of 2 dedicated sentences, and is also scored according to a rubric. Students write what they hear on the response sheet. We provide you with a worksheet to test your understanding about scoring writing samples. We also offer a written prompt assessment in CASAS eTest Online and a functional writing assessment using picture prompts that is not online. Certification is required to implement either of these writing assessments. For more information, please send an email to casas@casas.org. You may check your scores on the next page. The next few pages discuss interpretation of results and testing accommodations. Now you will want to be sure and read through. Okay. Now this page provides guidelines. This page here, this provides guidelines for an ABE intake process. The next page is similar and provides guidelines for an ESL intake process. Both ABE and ESL intake processes are similar for the first step in that with both, you observe how well the student communicates and fills out forms, administer the writing screening or other writing assessment, and consider other factors affecting level placement. The primary difference between ABE and ESL intake during Step 1 is administering the oral screening to students who cannot speak English well. Then evaluate information and determine the next step, which is described in 2 parts. Now, when a student's oral screening, let me increase this. Okay. When a student's oral screening score is below 6, as you may see here, you need to go to Step 2A. Now, a student's oral screening score is below 6 for non-native speakers of English, or a student whose first language is English and has difficulty writing their name and address and in completing the writing sample, or has other significant limitations. In both cases, you will skip the locator or appraisal and then administer the 5 practice items from Form 27, one-on-one. This is the beginning literacy reading assessment. Okay. If the student has some difficulty, administer Form 27. As the only pre-test. If student has little or no difficulty, administer Level A reading and listening forms as pre-tests. Now follow the path on Step 2B when a student oral screening score is generally 6 or more, or above 6 for non-native speakers of English, or a student whose first language is English and writes their name and address and produces a basic writing sample. In both cases, you will administer the locator plus a pretest. Okay? Now, Step 3 describes appropriate placement guidelines based on results, which is place students in an instructional level according to the lower of the 2 pre-test scores. Okay? Now the next 2 pages are skill level descriptor charts for ABE and ESL. These charts provide general skill descriptors by level and scale score. For an updated chart of WIA Title II funded programs, visit the CASAS website for accurate placement since scale score ranges change for listening. These are the charts. Now the chart for WIA Title I funded programs has not changed and applies to both adult and youth providers for workforce training programs. The recommended intake process is used for both paper and web-based testing. The exception is that the locator is only available online. You will have to use a standardized fixed form appraisal when paper-based testing. Are there any questions about the recommended intake process before demonstrating how to use CASAS eTest online following this process? Now the first demonstration follows steps 2A in the intake process. Okay. Now to administer the 5 practice items on Form 27 using the Intake Beginning Literacy session. From the Management Console, click View for the Beginning Literacy session to access a session activity window. From the session activity window, click Add Stations at bottom left of the session activity window. Select the station and then click Add to the active session. At the testing station, click Refresh to start the testing process. Enter identification and click Continue. Enter name of the student and then click the forward arrow to proceed. Save the new student record. Notice that practice tests are hidden on the test menu. This is intentional at this level and because the proctor will be going through the 5 practice items on Form 27 with the student, one-on-one, to observe the student and determine the next step in the intake process. At the test menu, click the Reading Test Form 27 button. The proctor may read these directions to the student as displayed on the screen. After going over the directions, the student or proctor clicks Next. Now the student proceeds with responding to the 5 practice items. The student has, and then the proctor, or while the proctor observes to see if the student has some difficulty or little or no difficulty. Now, if the student has some difficult responding to the 5 practice items, the proctor directs the student to begin or click the Begin button and complete Form 27 as the pretest. If the student has little or no difficulty, the proctor uses the Control+E key command to interrupt the test. Note, if there is a delay in activity on the test screen, the Control+E key command may not work. When this happens, navigate forward to reactivate the screen and then use the Control+E key command again. Select Do not score the test and end it now to cancel the test. The test screen returns to the test menu. The test is not scored or recorded and no WTU is decremented for the canceled test. Now the proctor will redirect the student to take Level A test forms instead. Because the student will need to log in again to take the Level A tests, the proctor or student should click Log Out at top right. Do not exit the application so that the e-test delivery system remains in the temporary memory on the station. The proctor now needs to remove the station from the beginning literacy intake session and add it to the Level A intake session. Now, I will return to my management console now. From the session activity window, for the beginning literacy session, click Remove. A pop-up message will ask you to confirm that you want to remove the station. Let's click OK. From the session activity window, at top right, click the back link and then return to the testing sessions list. From the management console, for the Level A, click View to access the session activity window. From the session activity window, at bottom left, click Add Stations. Check the station and then click the Add button to add to the active session. At the testing station, anything in the ID field, let's enter something here and click Continue. A pop-up message informs the proctor of the interruption caused by removing the station from the beginning literacy session and adding it to the Level A session. This is expected, so click OK. Now have your student log in again. Need to enter the identification and click Continue. The student is asked to confirm identification or ID. Let's click Yes. Now the test menu now presents the student with Level A test forms. Notice that practice tests are hidden on the test menu. This is intentional since the student has already been introduced to web-based testing by responding to practice items on Form 27. At direction from Proctor, the student clicks a test button and begins taking a pretest. The student will continue taking both reading and math for ABE and ASC programs or reading and listening for ESL programs. When finished, the student will log out. So at top right, click Log Out. For all students who score above 6 on the oral screening for non-native speakers of English or whose first language is English and who write their name and address and who produce a basic writing sample, follow the intake process path described in Step 2B and administer the locator plus pre-test. Now, to see what the test menu looks like for Step 2B, let's go back to our session activity window. Now we need to remove the station from the Level A intake session and add it to the locator plus pretest session. From the session activity window for the Level A intake session, click Remove. A pop-up message will ask you again to confirm what you want to remove or that you want to remove your testing station and click OK. Now from the session activity window at top right, click the back link and then return to the testing sessions list. From the management console, for the locator plus pretest, click View to view and to access the session activity window. From the session activity window, click Add Stations. Check your station and then the button Add to the active session. At the testing station, enter anything in the ID field and then click the Continue button. A pop-up message again informs the proctor of the interruption. Click OK. Have a new student log in. And then click Continue. As a new student, enter name, middle name is optional, and last name is required. And then click Continue or the forward arrow. Now save the new student record. The test menu now includes practice tests since the session is used for new students taking a CASAS web-based test for the first time. The proctor gives the student an opportunity to practice before taking the locator plus pretest, and when finished, the proctor directs the student to click a test button, Begin Testing. The student will continue taking both locators and pretests in reading and math for ABE and ASE programs, or reading and listening for ESL programs. When finished, the student will log out. At top right, click Log Out. Place students in an instructional level according to the lower of 2 pretest scores as step 3 of the intake process. The pretest score serves as the initial point of comparison for progress testing. When testing is finished for the session, proctors should click Exit by clicking that link at top right of each testing station to close the testing application. Remember also to run the management console or return to this management console and then stop all sessions. Okay. Now from the session activity window, let me bring you back to the session activity window. We're going to click Manage and then stop the session. You may need to refresh the testing sessions list if needed, and then click Manage to stop remaining sessions. Repeating the operation, stop. There we go. Since we are finished working in the eTest Management Console, click the back link at top right of the Management Console screen and return to the main menu. Then click the Logout link at top right. Okay. This returns you to the login screen. However, you are not completely disconnected from the server. For security, exit the application at top left. Now click the web browser back arrow. Now you are completely disconnected from the server and return to the main domain web page where you started. Each workshop in a set of CASAS Online Implementation Basics builds on the last in a logical progression for helping you get up and running with the online system. If you missed a workshop, we posted a playlist from past recordings so that you may review a previously attended workshop or preview upcoming workshops. You may access them from Training and Support, eTest Online Help, Workshop Recordings. Click on this link, CASAS Online Implementation Basics. And Access them and others from our social media newsroom from our YouTube channel. Please note this information about our CASAS Technology Support Team. The support team is available to provide any technical assistance you may need to ensure successful implementation. This email address alerts a support team that includes several members. Communicating to the larger group will help us to ensure you receive a timely response. Team members are available from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Time, Monday through Friday. We look forward to you joining us for the next workshop on how to register students. Thank you for your time, and this concludes the workshop on how to follow an intake process using CASAS eTests Online.